What is good, team? Welcome back to the channel. It's been few and far between with these training style vlogs, and I thought what a great opportunity to get them done 6 weeks out from my first show. I've been very quiet on the YouTube front, but more so not necessarily from executing, just more so locked down with business, with coaching, with a few exciting projects that we're launching over the next couple of weeks. So basically we're launching our supplement company, Ultimate Supps. And our first product will be our Ultimate Cream of Rice. We've got a new coach starting, and obviously we've got a show coming up. So 6 weeks out from the first show of the season, which will be the San Antonio Pro. So heading back over to Texas, excited to get over there and get that first show underway. And I might throw some visuals up on the screen now for this week's check-in. Gabby, wife/editor/ full-time life organizer, can pop that on the screen. But while I'm talking here, I'll show you guys how we're looking and the things that we're doing. But basically at the moment, we're about 99.7 kilos this morning, AM fasted, which is, for me at the moment, about, what are we now? About 3.5 kilos over the weight cap. Which is a great spot to be about 6 weeks out. So still about 3 kilos to pull off in terms of actual body fat to get us nice and lean. And then just some tinkering with food, with fluid balance, all that sort of stuff to get us nice and sharp and crispy and ready for that show. So it's gonna be a very different outcome from the last time you guys saw me on stage, where we were well under the weight cap, we kind of cruised in, no real issues. Where this one is gonna be a fun one now, potentially just having to manage the look a little bit better, utilize some dehydration tactics, sauna, all the rest of it, and ensure that we're at the height for the show, because obviously with the classic physique category, you've got the height and weight cap that you need to stay under. But the benefit for me is over the last couple of months, I've actually got an inversion table. If you haven't seen it, it's one of those machines where you hook your feet in, flip upside down, and it lengthens out your spine and your hips, just to keep the spine nice and lengthened, to keep me at the height, because I'm right on the cusp. So it's definitely a big drop down from like the higher class at 96.2 all the way down to 92.5. So definitely want to stay in the higher class. That is pretty much us for this week anyway. I'm coming off the back of like a 6-day diet break and deload. First one that we took of this prep, which really didn't see too much happen in terms of body weight. Like body weight didn't really come up too much, didn't come down too much, stayed pretty static. Off the back of consuming around about, I think we're like 650 carb for 2 days, and then at like 500, 550 for 4 days. So a big decent jump up in carbohydrates. But we just saw the physique freshen up, some new lines and new places that we hadn't seen before. So certainly exciting as we move into this next little deficit period and sort of kicking off this new mesocycle, which is the last week, last 6 weeks. New training program, back into deficit, back into dieting. I wanted to take you guys through it anyway. Long way of saying we're basically kicking off this new mesocycle in the last 6 weeks of this prep. Day one, week one of new meso, push chest emphasis session. So I'll take you through exactly what we're doing, sets, reps, exercise selection, all that fun stuff, as I normally would with all my prep vlogs. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Leave me any comments or questions you have down below, and we'll get stuck into session one. Alrighty, so exercise one, incline cable fly. Actually something that I hadn't utilized for quite a long time. I'd been sticking a lot to the seated machine or pec deck fly, but this has been really nice. It's something that does give you a bit more of a stretch in the bottom position, being on that incline, compared to the pec deck machine. And just a nice way to really start the session off with something that just trains the pecs directly. So if you are someone that wants to grow your pecs specifically, how you set up your program really matters. And I would argue doing something like an isolation single joint chest fly variation, a great way to start off your session to really light up the pecs, to get a lot of stimulus in there, and something that's not going to beat you up too much systemically, especially in the later stages of a fat loss phase, for example, where we want to direct as much stimulus to the target muscle as possible with the least amount of drawbacks, the least amount of injuries or potential for injury down the line. Again, it does allow you to get a lot of volume in for the muscles you're trying to grow. So, for example, if I was aiming to grow my pecs and I need to escalate volume over the period of a training cycle, I would just direct a lot more volume to this. So I might start at 2 sets at the start of my mesocycle. I might add a couple of sets as I get through there. Even if I did 3, 4, 5, 6 working sets here, it's just directed on the pecs. I'm not going to get any elbow issues. I'm not going to run into too much systemic fatigue because it is an isolation exercise. And then I can go into my primary pressing stuff where there's a bit more crossover into anterior delts, triceps, things like that, where we will potentially get a little bit more joint tendon disruption and the opportunity and the potential risk of injury and the increase just general fatigue, wear and tear associated to those heavier compound barbell machine type movements. And a note on this initial week of training, it almost acts as like a deload or an intro week. So what I'll do here is on the first week of training, it'll be like 2 to 3 reps in reserve. So what we know about hypertrophy specifically, around 0 to 5 RIR seems to be that productive zone for training. This just allows us to kind of ease into the new training cycle, to get an opportunity to kind of grease the groove, to get into some new movement patterns, feel them out, establish our working loads, establish our range of motions, and establish our rep techniques. So from there, all we need to do is escalate our training cycle over the course of many, many weeks in terms of either adding volume, adding reps, adding load, or a combination of all three, just to ensure that our training is productive in some manner across the course of a training cycle. So if you are someone that does want to grow your pecs specifically, I think the incline cable fly is a non-negotiable when it comes to setting up your training program. So here are my top tips to help you get the most out of it. Number one, set up the bench on a low incline. Around 35 to 45 degrees seems to be the sweet spot in order to maximize recruitment or activation of the upper pecs without too much involvement of the interior delts. Number two, take your time. There is no benefit to you swinging the load up and down, avoiding the deep stretch, and using way too much momentum just to lift heavier, because it is going to take away tension from the pecs. And number three, find an arm position that feels comfortable for you. With flies specifically, you don't need to have your arms completely out straight. It is only going to put more added stress on the elbows and biceps. I find somewhere in that sort of 45-degree bent elbow position allows me to get a nice big stretch on the pecs without any issues in my elbows or biceps, allowing me to emphasize the deep stretch and come up into that shortened position where I can really contract my pecs at the top. Alrighty, exercise number two, incline dumbbell press. This has been really good. It's been really progressive over the last couple of weeks. I had this in my previous motorcycle, and it's certainly one of those exercises that in a prep can get a little tricky, just due to the fact that it's pretty unstable. Obviously you have to move heavy dumbbells around when you start lifting heavy. Just can be a little bit more taxing. But I suppose doing it second for me has kind of dropped the overall load exposure a little bit. It means that when I get into this exercise after doing flies first, my pecs are already lit up. I've already got a ton of stimulus, ton of blood in the pecs. So I don't necessarily need to do as much here, but it is certainly an opportunity to just prioritize strength progression. And I think that's one of the real things in prep that allows you to kind of maintain tissue during a fat loss phase or during a deficit is your level of strength. So if you are monitoring your strength progression in some capacity, you can say with a high degree of certainty that you are maintaining tissue if your level of strength stays the same or improves. So I know for me, at least, if I match my performances every week or I do a little bit better, I know that I'm maintaining tissue throughout this prep, and I'm going to look better on stage. So first working set here, we've got two working sets, 8 to 10 reps, 50 kilo dumbbells, and then I will just aim to progress this a little bit more next week. This being an intro week, like I said, staying a little bit further away from failure, being a little bit more conservative with my load selections. So I do leave enough room for about 6 weeks of progression in this training plan. Probably have me to 65s by the end of the cycle, which will be nice because that'll be the strongest I've ever been this close to prep. If you want to grow some huge pecs, I think the incline dumbbell press should be a non-negotiable when it comes to your programming. Unfortunately, most people do it wrong, so here's how we're going to do it right. Number one, use a low to moderate incline. I think 35 degrees to 45 degrees is the perfect position to maximize tension to the upper pecs and to avoid overusing the anterior delts. Because unfortunately, most people experience anterior shoulder pain when it comes to incline pressing, and it's just due to the angle being too high. Number two, your elbow or arm path. You definitely don't need to be too tucked in. Again, it's probably going to put a little bit too much pressure on the anterior delts, somewhere in that 45-degree elbow out position, which will allow us to get maximum stretch in the pecs, especially in that bottom position. And number three, control the loads that you use. You definitely don't need to lift super heavy and just use a ton of momentum, bouncing the dumbbells up and down with no real regard for your technique. Really emphasize the deep stretch in the bottom, pause there for a second or two, and explode on the concentric where you can contract your pecs at the top, but you emphasize control throughout the entire range of motion. Again, we're trying to direct stimulus to the pecs and contract the pecs under load. We're not necessarily just trying to move heavy load from A to B with no control. So if you focus on these three things, I guarantee your pecs will grow. Alrighty, exercise number three, incline Smith press. So just an opportunity again, just to get some more incline pressing in, because who doesn't need bigger upper pecs? This one, obviously, as we get deeper into the session, we're just leveraging patterns that are maybe a little bit more stable now as fatigue accumulates. So Smith incline being a great opportunity to just elicit a bunch of stimulus to the pecs without having to worry too much about stability being a concern. Again, reducing that risk of injury the deeper we get into this prep. I had been progressing this really nicely. So this week, again, like I said with that intro week, just an opportunity to have a little bit of a pullback just to ensure that I've got more room to progress. So I might even just kind of leave this at 2 plates today, 10 to 12 reps, and then I'm going to aim to jump it up pretty aggressively from next week to just continue that progression pathway. This one mistake with your incline Smith pressing could be costing you chest gains, and it's the angle at which you press. Now, when it comes to Smith machines, they're all built a little differently. You might have some that are vertical, you might have some that are on an angle, and the main mistake I see most people making is pressing the wrong way when it comes to the angled Smith machine. So when we're looking at the angle or the bar path that we want to follow to maximize upper pec recruitment, we want to utilize the angle going up towards our face. So as the barbell comes down, it should be coming to the lower portion of your sternum, and then you should be pressing back over your eyes. That arm path specifically lines up with the upper fibers of the pecs to ensure that you are recruiting them as best as possible to maximize stimulus to that area. Whereas if you go the other way and you're pressing forward, you're going to recruit much more triceps. So I would use the forward variation of that Smith machine angle if I was doing something like a close grip press or a JM press where I wanted to target my triceps specifically and reduce the overall stimulus to my pecs. So next time you're doing your Smith incline pressing on an angle Smith, make sure your angle is going backwards, down to the lower sternum, over your eyes, and I guarantee your upper pecs will explode. Exercise 4 and the final chest movement of today, which is great because my chest is smoked. So it's about 8 working sets total of chest for this session. And I think across the week, that's all I'm doing. 8 working sets once a week. So in terms of like volume allocation for chest, it's not a lot. It's actually all done in one session. So frequency is only once, but it does allow us a lot more opportunity to train other stuff more frequently and with more volume. So for example, like I'm hitting delts more, I'm hitting back more, and arms a little bit more as well, where chest is kind of trained at maintenance. So what we know about just volume allocation in general, that maintenance volume target for most muscle groups seems to be around 4 to 8 working sets per week. And again, frequency doesn't matter too much when volume is equated. So, you know, there's the whole thing about like the bro split being suboptimal, but at the end of the day, like if you're doing enough volume, I think frequency doesn't really matter too much. I think frequency is just a way to increase overall training volume rather than just burying yourself in one session. So if I was doing like 16 sets of chest for the week, I wouldn't necessarily do it all in one session. I would split it across 2 sessions because it would allow me to just accumulate more total weekly training volume, and it would be more productive in that manner rather than just hammering myself in one session. That's pretty much just my volume chat for today. So 2 working sets here, 10 to 12 reps, nothing crazy. Again, just another stable chest variation to basically hammer the pecs home today. I've had sort of 3 incline variations and then 1 flat press variation. All right, so to wrap up this push session, finishing off with some triceps. If your objective for your training or your physique development is to improve your triceps, I would say do the session in reverse. So start with all the tricep stuff at the early part of your session, so you can really isolate the triceps first, get a ton of volume in there. Then you could just go back and finish off your chest with some more isolation movements, and then do another session later in the week where you prioritize chest with a lot of pressing variations and maybe just some tricep isolations to finish off. But in any case, for me, I've got enough tricep volume, so for me, it's just kind of 4 working sets at the end of this push session because I am still accumulating some carryover volume from the pressing. So like I said, about 8 sets of pressing, which gives me equivalent volume of about 4 sets of triceps, plus this 4 sets, so it's about 8 sets total, and I've got a bit of triceps in my later session in the week. So again, between that 8 and 12 seems to be that sweet spot for the most productive training. In any case, to start the tricep portion of this session, incline tricep pushdowns. So if you are someone that struggles to connect with normal tricep pushdowns because as it gets heavier, maybe it's a bit unstable and you kind of feel awkward sort of standing there trying to heave the load down from A to B, it can just get a bit wobbly and a bit uncomfortable, a bit hard to progress as well, especially if you get elbow pain, shoulder pain, that type of stuff. I feel like this is a great variation to keep you really, really stable. You can lock your arms by your side, really just prioritize extension at the elbow to hammer those triceps. And it does allow you to just progress the hell out of your triceps without involvement of any other muscle groups or letting like ego or momentum take over. So 2 working sets here, 8 to 12 reps, and this absolutely nukes my triceps. Oh my gosh. 1 set and my triceps are cooked. Final tricep exercise to finish off. Now, on the topic of stability, maximizing output, I think these 2 variations that I've just shown in this video are like absolutely goated for just nailing your triceps and getting the most out of your tricep development. Because unfortunately, I think so many people obsess over lifting really heavy when it comes to smaller muscle groups like triceps, like biceps, like delts, all of these single joint movements that, you get the most out of them just by doing single joint isolation movements for that moderate to high rep range where you really burn the crap out of that muscle. So finding opportunities where we can just lock in, we can isolate a lot of the other joints that are involved in that function and just hammer that exercise. So for the triceps specifically, we want elbow extension. So if we can fix the upper arm, if we can fix the torso, if we can stay seated where we're just training elbow extension, it'll, I guess, upset a lot of people because their ego will take a hit. You won't be able to lift as heavy, but what you will lose in load, you will gain in stimulus and therefore muscle growth. So if you do want a nice variation that you can utilize for a single arm overhead tricep extension, give this one a try. Oof. So that wraps up today's push session, guys, and session 1 of this new mesocycle, video 1 of this prep series vlog 6 weeks out from the first pro show of the season. So I hope you guys got some value from that one. You saw about 8 working sets of chest, 4 working sets of triceps, and that about wraps it up. So as always, if you get any value from these videos, make sure you comment, like, share, most importantly, subscribe to the channel, and I'll hopefully keep getting these videos out on a regular basis. The closer we get to these shows now, we've got some more exciting stuff happening. Like I said, with prep, with the supplement business, with the clothing brand, with new coach coming on board, and just the general travel that we have coming up. We'll be visiting about 4 different cities across 2 different countries over the next couple of months, which will be very exciting. So lots to share with you guys on the channel. So make sure you stay tuned. But until next time, guys, peace.